It was exactly 10 years ago this week that I came here first to Engelsberg, and I spoke about Yemen. And although I spoke about jihadi poetry at the time, the war, the internationalized civil war, had just kicked off, and it seemed a very remote thing. It didn't generate much interest, and for years it didn't generate much interest until this started happening. And then it generated a huge amount of interest. So the Houthis started launching missiles and drones into the Red Sea in earnest in November 2023, about 5 weeks after the Hamas attacks. But we knew that this was going to happen for a very long time. Well, first of all, we knew that the militarization of Red Sea islands was happening in the weeks before the Hamas attacks. But more importantly, we could see what their game plan was ultimately, to hold the Red Sea to ransom if necessary. And indeed, we have recordings from that were taken between Iran and the Houthis from 2014, which provide hard evidence of this discussion of launching missiles into shipping routes. Now, just look at this map, because this tells you why Yemen is so important. This bit here, the Bab al Mandab, there were about 17,000 ships a year going through that. Probably around about, depending on whom you read, 12 to 20% of global seaborne trade takes that route. And the population of Yemen is also, this isn't just some small backwater. It's got about 35 million people. More important, about half of them are under the age of 15. So we've got a coastline as well that's about 2,000 kilometers long. And I want you to remember this map, because I'm going to come back to it. Because the Houthis and their friends could now account for tribal areas here, 1,000 kilometers away from the Houthis. These links have been made. The other side of the Red Sea as well. And this coastline here via new links to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. So there's still quite a lot of problems waiting to happen in this area. I was really struck by what Rania said yesterday on Syria, because, again, this war in Yemen that's been going on in Yemen, not just in the Red Sea, it's been going on for 10 years, this latest round. And although there was a truce in 2022 that has expired, and the war technically is still going on, and it's a very internationalized civil war, like what Rania was telling us yesterday about Syria. We've got all sorts of actors. Saudi backing the internationally recognized government versus Iran backing the Houthis versus the United Arab Emirates backing the southern separatists, who are also technically part of the internationally recognized government, but not really. So that's another struggle waiting to happen. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are fighting their own proxy battle in Yemen. Of all of those characters, the strongest may well be the Houthis. And that red splodge accounts for where they are. These are their territories. And the stripy splodge is where they hold considerable influence. And so that accounts for about 2/3 of Yemen's population. So that's around 22 million people. And they're very organized. They have a great organization mechanism. They have their Jihad Council. They have their Supreme Leadership Council. They have youth organizations. They get right down to a local level. So in some senses, they're much more sophisticated than the government. So who are they? This handsome gentleman here, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, he runs the movement, Check out the scarf that he's wearing, by the way. So this is their slogan. Allahu Akbar, al-Maut li-Amrika, al-Maut li-Israel, al-La'nat al-Yahud, al-Nasr lil-Islam. Really, really bellicose. So it includes death to America, death to Israel, and a curse on the Jews. And this is a very typical photo of the Houthis. But two things we need to bear in mind. One is perceiving America as an enemy and perceiving Israel as an enemy are not unusual in Yemen. They're not unique to Houthis. 82%, in fact, of Yemeni youth, the last time there was an Arab World Youth Survey, split up by country, considered America the enemy. And of course, guns are not unusual at all. In my own survey work in Yemen, we found more guns per household than books. But this is a kind of family enterprise. It's not a tribe. The Houthis are not a tribe, but they are run by a family, and they have an increasingly supremacist ideology. They're Shi'i, technically. They're the Zaydi group of Shi'ism. Now, we know that there are lots of flavors of Shi'ism, thanks to Hugh Kennedy's talk yesterday. But this is a different flavor from the Iranian flavor. But they've been coming increasingly close towards Iran, both religiously, culturally, and of course, militarily. What do they actually want, though? Two things: power and money, and attention. Maybe three things. So, I mean, that probably sounds quite familiar. It's in common with many other administrations. In 2014, they took over the capital, and they did that by riding a popular wave. What they said they wanted was to help people overcome injustice, corruption, to stand against nepotism, to try to help the economy. All of these things, of course, they've done pretty much precisely the opposite. It's hard to argue against nepotism when you yourself run a supremacist movement, which pretty much instills power in your own family as the legitimate inheritors of the prophet's mantle, essentially. Over the last decade, they've become more hardline. They've got closer to Iran, and they now want, I think their two immediate goals are getting hold of energy resources in Yemen and getting hold legitimately of coastline, so keeping coastline, and probably trying to go for the Bab al Mandab. That's choke point. What don't they want? They don't want peace yet. And think about that, because they have in fact been at war on and off for over 20 years. It's in 2004 that the first Houthi rebellion started. And so just think that if you're under the age of 25, say, and you're living in the Houthi strongholds, that means that you won't really have any memory of anything other than war. And so when we think about the Houthis wanting peace, or trying to reach a ceasefire with America, for example, recently, it's very hard to hanker after and to drive towards and to really want something that you haven't really known. So we're making assumptions. What I'm trying to say is that war has become a way of life for millions and millions of rapidly reproducing people. So where do they get their weapons from? Well, I had a research project which was to look for poetry, but at the same time I was also interviewing checkpoints and figuring out the routes that they were taking. And there was a lot coming in the east. This is an unforeseen consequence of war. Those tribes I pointed out on the map in the east of Yemen, lots of alliances were made between not just the Houthis, but also with Al-Qaeda, weapons drop-offs, business as usual. You drop some off with Al-Qaeda and then go on and deliver the rest to the Houthis. They were, of course, arch enemies at the time. And so we felt that there was masses coming in from that, along that eastern coastline, about 520 kilometers of it. By the way, the truce in 2022 also meant that the Red Sea ports were easier to penetrate again too. So this is all really important because fast forward to 2023, this is the month before the Hamas attacks. They have huge stockpiles of weapons. This would not be possible without Iran. But that doesn't mean that it will end if Iran is removed from the picture, either by coming to some kind of agreement that it will stop arming the Houthis or by being bombed until it's not in a position to arm the Houthis. So the reason for that is that the stockpiles that the Houthis have built up are vast. Many of them are underground. They have new sources of support too. They're trying to broker deals with other nefarious players. Russia is right up there. And of course, their asymmetric war means that they don't have to have really sophisticated weapons. They can produce domestically. And you don't need to be accurate to close down shipping in the Red Sea. You just need to keep chucking them out. And Israel as well. You just need to keep sending people to the shelters. You don't actually need to hit anything. Just having a look at the time. Okay, I need to move on. I think that there are 4 things that we often misunderstand when we think about stopping the Houthis. The first is that the weakening of the axis of resistance is all bad. For them, it's also an opportunity. And indeed, they have boasted, their leader has recently said that the Houthis are bolder than Iran. They're more ambitious. They're making new friends. Al-Shabaab, I mentioned, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, their arch enemy. There is some kind of arrangement there now. It's been, this month, it's precisely 3 years since Al-Qaeda has attacked the Houthis or vice versa. And yet there are about 72 attacks happening from Al-Qaeda still every year. Number 2, the Houthi experience is that threats pay. So people often ask, why are the Houthis doing this when they almost had the UN roadmap at their fingertips and they were about to be recognized? Why would they throw that away? And the answer is, the Houthis don't think that they're throwing it away. They think they can get more. They always get deal remorse. Number 3, they operate by a different logic. They've survived 7 years of the last 10 being pummeled by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They feel very confident. They saw America's defeat in Afghanistan and in Iraq as they perceive it, and they have a high tolerance for casualties. They also think God's on their side. And then finally, they have fabulous propaganda. We saw here the youth outreach. They have a TV channel, they have Telegram channels, and they have massive amounts of poetry and song. I'm just going to finish off by playing you an example of this. And the reason this is important is that when we focus on taking out missile launchers and weaponry and the occasional commander, we're missing this much bigger picture, which is their propaganda apparatus, which is incredibly powerful. My phone is littered with apps, which full of sort of Houthi lists. Here's what they put out. This was just 3 weeks after the Hamas attacks, and it became popularly known, it's only a 30-second clip, it became popularly known as Yemen's declaration of war on Israel. Think how catchy it is.
جينا خيالك مثل نفخ الصور أمجادنا في الدهر محفورة محور جهادي بالهدى منصور وأحلامنا بالعز مشهورة.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth.